There is a new counterculture in America, and that counterculture is not about protest, it's not about disruption, it is not about conflict, it is about listening. Welcome back, everybody, to the most hopeful place on the internet, the hopeful majority. I'm your host, Manu. Every Monday, YouTube, Spotify, Apple. If you're tired of division, if you're tired of the way that our politics are building out, if you're tired of the polarization in our country, this is the place for you. If you're sitting at home and you're saying, man, there's so many extreme voices out there, we need to be louder about how to have more conversations and have dialogues, this is the place for you. 21,000 students represented, 167 student leaders participating, 95 college chapters. I just came back from the BridgeUSA Student Summit in Indianapolis. And if you don't know what BridgeUSA is, you're missing out because it's the largest student organization in the country trying to bridge divides on college campuses. And I want to tell you 3 things that I learned from that event, because these 3 things are going to shape what politics look like in the fall, what's going to happen on our college campuses, and most importantly, give you an insight into opportunities and places for hope. By the way, if you're new, or if you've been here for a while and you're like, the background has changed, it's because we moved last week. And this wall is going to be built out. I know it's a little white right now. If you're on Spotify and Apple and you want to see what the background looks like, jump over to YouTube, give this channel a little bit of love, because you'll actually be able to see some of the inside jokes that we all play around political divides and having a hopeful majority. So, background has officially changed. We're in a new place. Let's get into the episode. Here's the deal. 3 things to know about where our politics are headed as it relates to college campuses, as it relates to young people, and most importantly, trends that no one else in the media is talking about. Number one, there is a new counterculture in America, and that counterculture is not about protest, it's not about disruption, it is not about conflict, it is about listening. This counterculture is about pluralism. It's about creating space for people of different views to have conversations. It's about bridging the divide between the left and right, not in some weird compromise, kumbaya way, but to understand why people disagree with us so we can actually humanize and understand their intentions. There's a new counterculture emerging on America's college campuses, and it's not about protest. Now you say, what? How is that possible? We did a lot of episodes, and we're actually going to have next week, we are probably going to have 2 students from the left and the right from our Wyoming chapter actually talking about their experiences being conservatives and liberals on a campus with the BridgeUSA chapter. But the fact is, I just came back from the National Summit, where you see the largest gathering of students of different views, different backgrounds, different politics. They're all trying to listen and understand, and they're bucking the trend, because the trend out there and on media is the trend of conflict and division. It's this idea that you can't actually listen to people that are different than you. And not just that, but it's not cool. And that's why this is the counterculture now. We're building a movement, and we're seeing this across the board, where students are actually coming together and having conversations with radically different viewpoints, and importantly, actually advocating for it, being loud about it. And this goes to point number 2. The tyranny of the 10% is over. The tyranny of the 10%. Manu, what do you mean by the tyranny of the 10%? How many of y'all have heard me talk about the outrage industrial complex? Leave that in the comments, because I'm curious about this notion that we live at this time where outrage sells and nuance doesn't. Everyone's out there talking a big game, spewing their bullshit, thinking about how their politics are engaged, and they're all focused on outrage and ginning influence. So what do we mean by the tyranny of the 10%? It's because the outrage peddlers out there, the outrage industrial complex, is not the majority of Americans. It's not even the majority of students on college campuses. It's a minority. And why 10%? Why 10%? How many people on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, we don't know these days, control 80% of content in terms of producing and posting it? 150 million users on X, 10%, 15 million people actually drive 80% of content on X. So social media is driven, imagine I told you a country of 350 million people is led by 15 million crazy people. And it's not crazy, I don't mean that colloquial. I mean the temperamental extreme. 10%. Total percentage of the electorate that usually shows up in primary elections to vote, 10%. Who shows up in those elections? It's usually the people with the most rigid ideological temperament. And so as a result, the general election is filtered through that 10%, the tyranny of the 10. Why is it important to understand the tyranny of the 10? It's because our division is not necessarily a result of people disagreeing. We've always had that. This has been a country of disagreement, for Christ's sake. At the BridgeUSA summit, what we saw was you have a lot of disagreement, but everyone is united not by what they believe, but how they believe, how they think. They're united around being open-minded instead of being closed-minded. They're united around this idea that we need to listen to people instead of shutting people out. They're united around this idea that most people that disagree with us have good intentions and are driven by basic human needs that all of us share. They're driven by this fact that it is time to put solving problems above our party. People over politics. You know that saying that all of our political leaders talk about, the outrage peddlers out there talk about? Well, it's time to end that tyranny of 10%, because the real problem in America is not political division. The real problem in America is that you have the loudest voices on the extremes, the 10%, controlling the microphone while the rest of us are completely quiet. And you say, Manu, why is this show called The Hopeful Majority? It's because of that fact. Our job is to figure out how to elevate that 10%. And number three, these students represent courage. These students represent courage. What do I mean by that? Because most people that listen to this show, and most of the outrage peddlers, the people that are that outrage industrial complex that know that saying the crazy shit out there is going to drive traction to their platform, those people will criticize this show and myself, say, this guy is just weak. He has no interest in views. He has nothing to believe. He just stands there and says, let's have kumbaya, but we're the ones fighting. We're the ones fighting. Well, let me tell you something. That's easy to say today. That's what America is about today. The courage is to stand in the middle of a protest and say, this is not going to solve and address the moment. What we need to do is we need to have a conversation and listen, because it is time to put problems and people above scoring political wins. It is courageous to stand there in front of an influencer that shows up in your campus and say, I'm not here to be on your 10-second clip, nor do I give a shit about your 10-second clip that you're going to make go viral and dunk on me. Instead, let's actually understand why you believe what you believe and I believe what I believe. That is courageous. Why is that courageous? It's because that does not get you points today. What makes you friends in our political arena, on X, what gives you followers, what makes you engagement and influence, is shouting from the top of your lungs and having no actual interest in the problem. These students are courageous. That's why this is the hopeful majority. And the fact is that America loves underdogs. America loves counterculture. America loves betting on people that are exhibiting a disruptive idea at a time when there's a different norm. And so what is that disruptive idea? What did we learn from the summit? The real divide is not between the left and the right. It's between open-minded and closed-minded people. The problem in our country is not division. We've always had division. The problem in our country is that you have a loud minority of voices across the political spectrum that control the microphone while the rest of us are quiet. The solution right now is to not only create systemic reforms that incentivize nuance and productive dialogue in our politics, but one of the key solutions is that our civic fabric, our daily social capital that exists in American society, it needs to be restored, and everyday Americans have to build back trust in each other. Not to agree, but to understand and believe that we are ultimately on the same team. Now, there are a lot of critiques of this idea, but the fact is that this is where the country is headed. And the fact is that these young people and your participation in the hopeful majority and what we're doing across the country is building a movement of people that are tired of being silent. They're tired of being quiet. We need to be loud about having productive bridging dialogues, because our mission is to empower the most Americans to be able to engage in constructive disagreement, not for the sake of agreement, but for the sake of understanding. And we've had so many amazing guests, so many conversations. And if you're new to the show, not every episode is a monologue. Some of them are fascinating conversations. We've had on interesting candidates. We've had on local city officials. We've had on folks like General Stanley McChrystal and YouTubers like PF Young, who was on our last episode. And in the future, we'll have on conversations with actual students that are on the ground, because the reality is we can't, and I can't just be talking about it. We have to actually show it. So this show over the next year is going to show you and actually take you in to some amazing places, communities, people that are actually leading this courageous charge, because this is the counterculture. Get ready. All right, everybody. I appreciate you listening. Again, I'll see you next Monday. YouTube, Spotify, Apple. If you're out there and you believe in what we have to say, leave a like, leave a review, subscribe, do that thing, because it's time to end the tyranny of the 10%. I'll see you next week.